Welcome everyone to the astrology capsule of July 2018. So there's a lot happening in July 2018. There will be two eclipses. One of them will be, the first one in mid-July will happen. It will be a partial solar eclipse. And later on July 27th, it will be a total lunar eclipse. And the last one is the most important one. There will be very important aspects during that eclipse. But let's start nevertheless with the first one in mid-July with the partial solar eclipse. At that point, there will be two main aspects that will add to that eclipse. It will be a square between Jupiter and Mercury. Mercury, being in Leo, will be in the full warmth, full sunshine of summer, and Jupiter will be in Scorpio. Now, Jupiter in Scorpio brings a lot of energy, is really connecting us to something very deep, connecting our own consciousness in terms of our management, consciousness of ourselves, how we manage our own life. We'll be connecting that to the things that are really deep within, that are very often hidden in us. And Jupiter, since quite a while actually, is working in Scorpio to just bring our own management consciousness, the management of ourselves, you know, how we live our life, bring that, tune this with what is really happening within, very deep inside. So very difficult to live a superficial life when Jupiter in Scorpio is doing all that work. And some people that, you know, try to stick their head in the ground and try to keep living this superficial life, well, with Jupiter in Scorpio, sometimes he will bring some specific challenges just to make sure we pull up our head and see the reality and just work with Jupiter in Scorpio. He's very strong, very powerful, so he's very able to trigger some specific things in our life so that this will happen. So we have the square with Mercury, which is in full sunshine, as I said, full warmth and so on in Leo, and Jupiter, which is in a water sign, very, very deep. So we see, you know, Jupiter and Mercury, they are connected through this student and teacher idea. Mercury being, of course, a student, and Jupiter, the teacher, they have this special connection. So now, since they are in tension because of the square, it will be quite difficult actually for Mercury, which is trying to shine, trying to be in the warmth and the activity of summer, and Jupiter that tries to force our consciousness to see the deepest things within ourselves, the things we usually don't want to look at. So it will be an, I would say, intellectual conflict. We'll try to keep doing the same things as we do usually, and Jupiter will really force us into something deeper. So anyway, everybody will see how that will work in their own life, and it should be interesting, probably a little bit difficult. I can foresee that for me it's going to be a challenge, but probably quite interesting. The challenge comes because there's a partial solar eclipse at the same time, so it reinforces a lot the strength of that square, because, you know, there's many squares with Jupiter. It's happening at least twice a year where there's Mercury's square Jupiter. So it's something kind of common, but this time it's happening at the same time as the partial solar eclipse, so it's giving more strength to that square. And then there's another aspect, it's the trine with Venus and Saturn. Venus is at the beginning of Virgo, and Saturn in Capricorn still retrograding, and they are forming that trine. Now, a trine is an aspect that is very beneficial, very harmonious. So, Venus in Virgo is kind of not shy, but it's not exposing herself so much. You know, Venus is this femininity, beauty planet, very charming, and now in Virgo it's not showing off so much. It's kind of discreet, it's using more clothes so it's really protecting its beauty, it's kind of hiding its preciousness away from sight. and Saturn is just doubling that idea and making it way stronger, because Saturn is always, you know, covering things up, and adding more layers and adding more clothing and making things more discreet, more humble. And so that trine is making this happening a lot. So these are the main aspects around that new moon of mid-July, which is happening at the same time, of course, as the partial solar eclipse. And maybe for you to know, solar eclipses always happen when there's a new moon, and moon eclipses always happen during a full moon. So let's go right away to the full moon of July. And it is a very special full moon because it will be, of course, a full lunar eclipse, a total lunar eclipse. And during that eclipse, there will be a big conjunction around the moon. Moon in conjunction with Mars, and there will also be the south node not far, also in conjunction. I usually don't work so much with the south node, but this time I will kind of include it because it's so major. And so there's that conjunction there. Lilith is not so far away either. But let's stick to Mars, Moon, and South Node. So all those will be in conjunction, and at that very moment there will be, of course it's a full moon, but it will be a total lunar eclipse at that moment when that conjunction is happening. And in the meantime, Uranus is forming a square with that conjunction of Moon, Mars, and South Node. And of course a square also with the Sun, because Sun is in opposition to Mars, Moon, and South Node. So there's a lot of energies happening, and let's go deeper in it. So Mars and Moon, what does that do together? The Moon is something very plain. It's an energy that doesn't have so much specific taste, but it's just there, very nourishing, just giving its energy, its care energy, it's our imagination. So it's very plain. Our imagination, if you take it just by itself, it's very plain. It's just this fabric that can be used, can be shaped, and so on. But Mars is quite opposite to that. It has a very specific taste. It's quite spicy. It's a motor, it's energy, it's action, it's movement. So when you put both together, it creates a lot of movement for our imagination. And it's a bit difficult to live that. To live so much movement for our imagination is a challenge. It creates so much movement. And all that is happening in Aquarius. And Aquarius is that sign that works with our connection to what we call egregores. Egregores is a group of persons connected through a certain goal, through a certain idea, through a certain energy or a certain entity. For example, a country. A country is formed, it's there, it has a land, it has its politics, its own political world, and it's something in itself, but it's formed by what? You know, we don't really know what a country comes from. You know, of course it has some history, but behind all this, there's something deeper. There's a kind of a spirit, there's a kind of entity, a kind of energy, a force that helped creating this country, shaping this country. There's some idea behind all this. It's way more than just politics. Politics are a consequence of that energy that is there. And that energy is absolutely invisible. And some people are really taken by it. You know, some people work with that energy a lot, but not everybody. Some people will be way more tuned with, for example, a hockey team or a basketball team or a football team, or, you know, they will look at sports team and they will be taken into that egregore of people that they want that energy to win or to go further and so on. So it's very different. We're sensitive to different things. Some people are very connected to an environmentalist, you know, movements, the Green Party and so on. It's another aspect, another type of egregore we can be connected to. And there's other types of egregores. For example, the teenagers. It's an egregore in itself. All teenagers, you know, when we talk about teenagers, we know what we're talking about. It's some kind of egregore connected to a certain energy that deals with all the teenagers of our planet. And this is shifting and it's evolving and we see a change in all that. But it's a certain energy that makes a group of people move in a certain directions. And we're connected to many egregores in our lives. Not only one, but many. And Aquarius is connecting us with that very energy behind the egregores. It's making us aware if we can, but it's totally connecting us to those egregores. That's why we say, oh, it's the age of Aquarius, everybody will be united, now it's a group, a consciousness, and it's all different. Yes, well, of course, but you know, let's see if we can really get there, because before living this wonderful Aquarius golden age, let's say, before that we'll have to face the reality of our own egregores, the ones we're already connected with, because Aquarius is happening since ever. It's always been there, and the age of Aquarius will just underline that, will just show us that more and more as time progresses, because we will need a lot of time to progress on that road of the egregores with the age of Aquarius starting. Well, that is just starting to show up a little bit. And little parentheses here. So all this conjunction Mars, Moon, and South Node in Aquarius, they are connected to our egregores. They're connected to the egregores we are involved with. Since there's the South Node there, South Node is talking about the past, talking about what we inherit from our genealogy, from old things coming from the past, right? So all this together allows us to work and to actually even create a movement within our own imagination, within our own fabric of our imagination, to move, and our subconsciousness too, because the moon also represents our subconsciousness. So it will be creating some movement, it will be churning all that energy from the past in our consciousness, and that is happening during a total lunar eclipse. I don't know if you get it, if that tells you something, but it's very key. Because a total lunar eclipse is nothing else than the Earth blocking the sun, the light from the sun to reach the moon. So the moon is actually in total darkness, let's say, for a while. And you know that the moon is turning around the Earth at a specific pace that is just the same as its own rotation around itself. And that allows the moon to have one face already showing up, always showing up to us on Earth, and another face always in the dark that we never see, never see. There's light, you know, sometimes from the sun touching it because the moon is turning around us and so on, but we never ever see that hidden face of the moon. So those energies that are hidden to us, hidden to our subconsciousness, they are in our subconsciousness, but they are hidden to our sight, they are hidden to our consciousness. We cannot see them, it's just they're hidden. Those energies that are there, when there's a total lunar eclipse, they kind of have access to us. They can go further. So those hidden things will have a specific time to show themselves at a moment where our subconsciousness, our moon, our imagination, our just fabric of our mind, let's say, will be under the great movement of Mars and connected to the past through the South Node, all that connected to the egregores we were and we are connected to in Aquarius. So you see, it's a lot of things, right? Because it's a big conjunctions. It's a big moment, right? So there's a lot of notions to get. You can hear that a few times if you don't get it at the first time, but everything is there. And so all that is happening, and so if your nervous system is very sensitive, just you know, calm down, because this will be quite amazing. There will be a lot of energies happening, a lot of movement in our mind will probably be triggered by that. And what is really nice from that total lunar eclipse is the square with Uranus. Uranus in Taurus at 2 degrees in Taurus will form a square with that conjunction, Moon, Mars and South Node, which is at 4 degrees in Aquarius, and also a square with the Sun at 4 degrees in Leo. So Uranus forming a square with that will just bring so much even more tension from this movement. And it will actually form tension because it will be saying it's time to change those connections with those egregores. It's time to do some kind of cleanup. You know, when a hurricane goes on south of the US, for example, that's what I know the most in terms of hurricanes. And when the hurricanes go there, they create a full mess and it's terrible, and they clean everything, they break everything, and some other countries also get it. And they just, it's just crazy what it does, huh? So Uranus is saying, let's do that. Let's do this to those ancient ways of dealing with the egregores we're connected to. And it's saying, let's clean everything up, let's create a new structure, because Uranus at that moment is forming a trine with Saturn in Capricorn. So Saturn in Capricorn, Uranus in Taurus, 2 earth signs, they form a trine. It's very harmonious energy. They work together hands in hands. And Saturn is holding the keys of our karma, of the consequences of our actions, of our conditions of life. And it's saying, yes, Uranus, go ahead and just make a change. And it's a big decision and it's a big moment. So that full moon and that total solar lunar eclipse happening on July 27th is major. Maybe we won't feel it on that exact day, because all that depends also on our own cycles in our own life. So we might feel it a bit before or a bit after, but all the energy that will be churning at that moment, this we will feel for sure. It's gonna be very, very intense. And of course, if you have aspect in your own chart connecting with at that very place, for example, if you have something at 4 degrees in Aquarius, for example, or around 4 degrees, close to it, this will be really, really important for you. And there's some other places in chart that will be interesting to look at. But that will be major, so just prepare. And the good side of that is there's another aspect happening. There's also a trine between Venus and Pluto. So we had earlier in the month in mid-July with that new moon and partial solar eclipse, we also had this trine with Venus and Saturn, where we were protecting the preciousness of Venus, its purity, let's say. We're kind of protecting it. Now Venus went further up in Virgo, and it's forming a trine now with Pluto, which is also in Capricorn, just like Saturn was, and it still is. So there's a trine with Venus and Pluto, and now we're touching the beauty of Venus. It's not about exposing it, it's about feeling it within. So the trine with Venus and Pluto will be about feeling Venus in blossom. And when it was in trine with Saturn, it was we were putting the seed in the ground and we're protecting it so that it can grow. And now already with Venus in trine with Pluto, we can feel it blossoming. And we feel the preciousness of our femininity, of our vulnerability, of our beauty. We feel this preciousness and we feel it in bloom. We feel the freshness of this Venus. We feel its perfume. We can even taste its nectar. But it is all within. It's all inside of us. And all that movement happening with Mars, Mars, Moon, and South Node in square with Uranus, with the total lunar eclipse, all that movement we described before is happening so that we can make a change in our life, so we can really protect that flower within, that Venus blossoming. So yes, there will be a lot of action. It might be a bit tricky for our nervous system, but in the meantime, let's keep in mind that we do all of that for that beauty, for that preciousness of Venus, for our own femininity within. And that's very, very key, extremely important, especially since Uranus is in Taurus. So it's also connected to that beauty of Venus in Taurus, which is very generous in Taurus. So of course it's creating big change. It's wanting to shift things, but it makes it to sustain a better, more peaceful life afterwards, a more blossoming life. So it's very beautiful, a great opportunity for work. I'm sure most of you will feel something very strong at that point, and I totally encourage you to prepare for that, to be mindfulness of what you're doing, and so on. So thank you very much for watching. I think that concludes the capsule for today. And of course, like, comment, share, and of course subscribe. And if you want to activate that notification bell there to know when will be the next astrology capsule, please do. That will be awesome. And thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.